Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now, let's get started. It started with the fan. You know the kind, ceiling mounted, slightly wobbly, makes a little ticking sound, like it's counting down to your doom. It was 2:41 a.m. I remember because I kept checking the time like I was waiting for a miracle to show up at my door. Spoiler, it didn't. Just more fan spinning, more thinking, and more not sleeping. I had no idea then that this would be the first in a long, miserable series of sleepless nights. I wasn't stressed about anything obvious, no looming deadlines, no recent breakups, no existential crisis about aging. Just awake, wired, exhausted, and wide-eyed at the same time. Like my body and brain had filed for divorce and weren't speaking. The sheets felt like sandpaper. The pillow was either too fluffy or too flat depending on which side I flipped it to. I tried all the usual tricks counting sheep. They fell asleep. Before I did deep breathing, which just made me hyper-aware of how loud my breathing actually was, and pretending I was floating on a cloud. But my cloud had taxes and credit card debt. Nothing worked. That night, I got approximately 47 minutes of sleep. If you add up all the 10-minute dozes and subtract the minutes I spent wondering if I was going insane, which according to some 17th century physicians was actually a thing. Sleep deprivation psychosis, they called it. It was once believed that witches could curse you into eternal sleeplessness. Honestly, I would have welcomed a hex at that point just to have someone to blame. The next morning, I say morning generously, I looked like I'd fought a raccoon in a dark alley. My under-eye bags had under-eye bags, my mood, somewhere between do not speak to me and I will cry if the toast burns. And here's the kicker. Nobody tells you how lonely insomnia feels. When you're the only one awake in a sleeping world, even your own breathing feels too loud. It didn't help that everyone had advice. Just relax. Oh, thank you, Diane. I hadn't thought of relaxing. Try melatonin. Done that. Read a boring book. I read 67 pages of 18th century shipping records still awake. Historians still debate whether insomnia is more a modern problem or just a modern complaint. But judging from those records, sailors weren't sleeping much either. At some point, the silence of night turned hostile. Every creak in the wall, every tick from the thermostat felt like a tiny judgment. Like my house was whispering, "Why are you still awake? You sad, sleepless potato." One time, I genuinely considered sleeping in the bathtub. You know, to shock my system into tiredness. That's not how bodies work, in case you were wondering. I ended up with a sore back and the vague fear that I might die of porcelain-based sadness. But amidst the chaos, I started noticing patterns. The nights I couldn't sleep were always preceded by one thing, racing thoughts. Not just the usual, did I forget to send that email kind. I'm talking full-blown Oscar-nominated spirals like, what if I never sleep again and lose my job and become that person who eats beans from a can while mumbling about REM cycles? You'd think my brain would get tired from all that overthinking. Nope. It's like it was on Red Bull, an existential dread. What's funny, well, darkly funny, is that humans used to sleep in 2 shifts. It's called segmented sleep. Back in the pre-industrial days, people would sleep a few hours, wake up for a while around midnight, and then go back to bed. They'd pray, write poetry, or make babies. That weird middle-of-the-night time was so common it had a name, the watch. And here I was, wide-eyed at 3 a.m. But instead of poetry, I was Googling, can lack of sleep cause spontaneous combustion? Off-topic fact. It can't. But it can make you feel like your brain is sizzling bacon in a pan. I remember sitting on my couch one night, wrapped in a blanket, like a haunted burrito sipping chamomile tea that tasted like regret. The windows were dark. Even the city noise had quieted down. It felt like I was the last person left awake in the world, and in a weird way, that thought gave me peace. Like I had stumbled into a secret time zone, one where everything slows down, one where if you listen carefully, the world hums differently. I started whispering things to myself, comforting things. It's okay. This will pass. And I know that sounds cheesy, but when you're sleep deprived, you'll take anything short of a possession. And then without warning, I slept. I don't remember drifting off. There was no grand finale, just stillness, darkness, a blank. And when I woke up 4 hours later, I cried, not from joy, but from pure relief. Like I'd escaped a prison I didn't know I was in. That night became a marker, the start of a long journey that I'm still walking, or crawling depending on the night. If you're here because you know that feeling of staring into darkness, begging your brain to stop buzzing, I'm with you. And trust me, it gets weirder before it gets better. But it does get better. Eventually, how I discovered that my favorite bedtime scrolling habit was tricking my brain into thinking it was still daytime. If I could go back in time and slap the phone out of my own hand, I would. Gently, of course. Maybe with a pillow. Because here's the truth. No one wants to admit the phone, the little glowing rectangle we cradle like a newborn puppy, might be the most innocent-looking sleep destroyer on the planet. There was a stretch of nights where I'd climb into bed swearing I'd be asleep by 10:30. But 10:30 would become 11, then midnight, then 1:17 a.m., and I'd still be scrolling. Dog videos, unhinged Reddit threads, those 3-minute TikToks where someone builds a tiny house out of marshmallows. Somewhere between watching a raccoon get rescued and a 9-part saga on medieval plumbing, I'd glance at the time and feel that dull panic rise in my chest. I was addicted to bedtime blue light. The thing is, that bluish glow from your screen, it's not just annoying, it's persuasive. It tells your brain, hey buddy, it's still daylight outside. No need to release melatonin just yet. And your poor brain-trusting little fool that it is believes it. It holds back the sleep hormone like a bartender refusing to serve you until 2 a.m. Historians still debate whether artificial light was the best or worst invention for human health. On one hand, Edison gave us the freedom to read past sunset. On the other hand, now we're watching people prank their cats at 3 a.m. with no consequences, except the slow withering of our circadian rhythm. Speaking of that, your circadian rhythm is basically your body's internal clock. It likes predictability. It wants to sleep when it's dark and wake when it's light. Simple, right? Unless you're me, convincing yourself at 1:42 a.m. that watching one more 10 creepiest lost tapes ever found video will somehow help you relax. One night, in a fit of accidental self-awareness, I noticed something eerie. After 2 hours of scrolling, my brain felt like it was buzzing, like my thoughts were moving faster than usual, but none of them made sense. It was like opening 36 browser tabs and then forgetting why you opened any of them. I even started hallucinating, kind of. Nothing dramatic, just little tricks of the eye. A shadow where there wasn't one. A faint hum that turned out to be the fridge. At one point, I thought my reflection blinked before I did. Turns out, this isn't totally uncommon. The longer you go without sleep, the more your sensory system starts running on fumes. Some monks actually seek out that state during deep meditation. I was achieving it with YouTube shorts and stale crackers. That's when I knew I had to do something drastic. I banished my phone from the bed. Now let's not pretend I did this heroically. I tried using the bedtime setting. I told Siri, no screens after 10, which she promptly ignored. I even downloaded one of those apps that turns your screen into grayscale so everything looks sad and uninteresting. Didn't work. I just got used to sad TikTok. The only thing that worked was putting the phone on the kitchen counter far enough that I'd have to get up to check it. Lazy triumphs over obsession, finally. I replaced it with a book. Not a fun book, mind you. A brick-sized hardcover about the history of taxation in Mesopotamia. Odd fact, ancient Babylon had a system where people could pay their taxes in grain or sheep. I read 3 pages and fell asleep mid-sentence, but the real magic didn't happen until I went screen-free for a full hour before bed. It wasn't easy. That hour felt like eternity at first. I tried journaling, tried stretching. I even tried listening to whale sounds until one track featured a whale that honestly sounded like it was crying in despair. Instant anxiety. Eventually, I found something that stuck. I started drawing. Nothing fancy, just doodles. Little sleepy animals, clouds some weird creature I called stress lizard. I let my brain slow down one pencil stroke at a time. And you know what? That quiet hour became sacred. The craziest part. After just a week of this ritual, I started falling asleep faster. My dreams came back. Actual dreams, not just chaotic brain static. In one, I was baking a lasagna on the moon with an 18th century noblewoman. Historians still debate whether dreams reflect suppressed desires or just mental housekeeping. Either way, mine needed a Swiffer, and the mornings slightly less murderous. I didn't wake up with that awful feeling like I'd lost a boxing match in my own head. The fan still ticked. My mattress was still mediocre. But my brain, it wasn't fighting me anymore. Not as much, anyway. One morning, while sipping coffee and enjoying the stillness, I had a strange thought. Maybe rest isn't just the absence of movement, but the presence of trust. Trusting that the world can turn without me scrolling through its every corner. Off-topic fact, by the way, snails can sleep for up to 3 years. That's the dream right there. I envy them. So yeah, blue light. She's seductive. Dangerous in a yoga pants and chamomile tea kind of way. But once I stopped inviting her into bed with me every night, I gave my brain permission to power down. To remember what darkness feels like without distraction. And you know what? Darkness isn't so scary when you stop filling it with noise. A confession of my chaotic relationship with coffee energy drinks and the power nap that turned into a 3-hour mistake. My name is redacted for embarrassment, and I used to think caffeine was a love language. I don't remember when it started exactly, but somewhere along the line, I began equating coffee with comfort. Morning latte mandatory. Afternoon iced coffee, emotional support. Evening energy drink. A bad idea, but one I made regularly. My brain didn't just want caffeine, it worshipped it, with foam art. And the irony, I never drank coffee to stay awake. I drank it to feel alive. But insomnia doesn't care about your rituals. It's not impressed by your French press technique or your knowledge of single-origin beans. It just takes your sleepless nights and turns your caffeine crutch into a vicious cycle. Wake up tired, slam coffee, feel jittery, crash, nap, can't sleep at night, repeat. It's like a sitcom written by your adrenal glands. One day, I made a truly glorious mistake. I discovered a new canned energy drink that promised clean alertness. Naturally, I drank it at 4 p.m. to prepare for grocery shopping. I wasn't even doing anything that required alertness, just bananas and oat milk. That night, I could practically feel my heartbeat in my ears. I reorganized my spice rack at 2 a.m. I wrote a poem about paprika. At one point, I debated whether or not I could teach myself Morse code just to pass the time. Spoiler, I learned the letter E. Historians still debate whether coffee culture improved productivity or just made us all more anxious with better branding. But I do know this: humans have been caffeinating themselves for thousands of years. The Sufi mystics in Yemen were using coffee to stay awake during late-night prayers as early as the 15th century. And here I was using it to make bad Amazon purchases at midnight. Noble, really. What finally pushed me to confront my caffeine dependence? A nap. Just a nap. But not any nap. This was the nap, capital T, capital N. I had convinced myself it would be a quick power nap. 15 minutes tops. I even set a timer, got under a cozy blanket, put on one of those nap sounds light rain on tent playlists. Boom, bliss. And then I woke up. 3 hours later, in the dark, disoriented. My contacts had fused to my eyeballs. My brain had rebooted, but not successfully. I sat up and honestly couldn't tell if it was morning or night. I stared at the wall for a full minute trying to remember who I was. That nap ruined me. I lay awake that entire night, body buzzing from too much accidental sleep and leftover caffeine. The next morning, I swore off both coffee and naps. Cold turkey. I was going to feel my fatigue for once. It was brutal. The first few days were pure fog. I kept losing things: my phone, my socks, my will to live. My body was mad at me. I had headaches, mood swings. I once yelled at a spoon because it clanged too loud. But eventually, a strange thing happened. I started yawning. I know that sounds normal, but for me, it was new. Like my body had forgotten how to get sleepy naturally. Suddenly, I could feel the rhythm of my day. My eyes would get heavy around 9:30 p.m., not because of melatonin gummies or sleep podcasts, but because I was tired. Like a human, I became something of a sleep purist, started tracking my caffeine intake like a scientist. No coffee after 11 a.m., herbal tea in the afternoon, lots of water. I even flirted with decaf, which, let's be honest, is just coffee cosplay. And naps. I gave them boundaries. 20 minutes only. Set 2 alarms. Sit in a chair, not a bed. No playlists with crying whales. Nap responsibly. Off-topic fact: giraffes only sleep around 30 minutes a day in short bursts. How? Why, no one really knows. But sometimes I think my insomnia was just me trying to become a giraffe. Anyway, the point is, once I cleaned up my caffeine act, something shifted. My energy felt less spiky. I didn't crash mid-afternoon. I stopped obsessively watching the clock at night. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And in the world of sleep, progress feels like a miracle. I also started dreaming more vividly. One night, I dreamed I was being chased by a squirrel that sounded like Morgan Freeman. In another, I married a cinnamon bun. Sweetest ceremony I've ever attended. These dreams felt like my brain finally trusting me to let go. Historians still debate whether dreams are symbolic messages or just leftover brain junk. But I say, if my mind wants to dress up a squirrel in a tuxedo and make him narrate my childhood memories, I'm not going to stop it. In hindsight, I think the hardest part was realizing how much of my caffeine use was emotional. It wasn't about staying awake. It was about masking how bad I felt not sleeping, like I was trying to caffeinate my way out of a problem I refused to face. Now, I still enjoy a morning coffee, but it's part of the ritual, not the rescue mission. I savor it. I sit down. I sip slowly. And by the time evening rolls around, I'm not crashing, I'm gliding. Well, most days. Sometimes, I still fall for the fantasy of a cozy afternoon latte. But then I remember Paprika Poem Night, and I walk away. When I realize my bed, a supposed safe space, was actually a backache factory with memory foam trauma. I always thought my bed was fine. Soft enough, held me up, didn't collapse under pressure. Basically, the opposite of me during exam season. But after months of waking up stiff sore and deeply betrayed by my own spine, I began to suspect the unthinkable. It wasn't me, it was the mattress. I know that sounds dramatic, but hear me out. For years, I'd blamed everything else. The weather, stress, maybe my posture during late-night snack binges. But slowly, grudgingly, I started realizing something was off. My back ached in ways it never had before. My hips felt like they'd been fighting in a medieval jousting match. My neck, forget it. I woke up one morning and couldn't look left for 3 days. I had to turn my whole body just to check blind spots. And then it hit me. This mattress, the one I had lovingly hauled up 2 flights of stairs, the one I told people was top-tier memory foam, had turned against me. What started as contouring comfort was now a slow descent into the pits of orthopedic doom. One night, as I was attempting to shift positions for the 50th time, I yelled out loud, "Whose memory is this foam using? Because it's clearly not mine." That's when I knew I had reached the breaking point. Literally. So I did what any desperate sleep-deprived adult does. I fell into a YouTube mattress review rabbit hole. I watched videos of grown men in lab coats jumping on beds. I read customer reviews like sacred texts. Firm but forgiving. Cradled my soul. Felt like sleeping on disappointment. I related to all of them. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptians slept better on their raised wooden headrests than we do on our overpriced mattresses. All I know is I would have traded mine for a pile of hay if it meant I could sleep without waking up feeling like I wrestled a walrus. Eventually, I bit the bullet and bought a new mattress. It arrived compressed in a box the size of a medium llama. Opening it was oddly ceremonial. I laid it out, watched it slowly rise and expand like a marshmallow in a horror film. And then, like any modern insomniac with trust issues, I just stared at it for a while. Night 1 was terrifying. It felt different, firmer, quieter. My body didn't know how to behave. I lay there like I was on a first date with a stranger who claimed to know my pressure points. I didn't fall asleep right away, but for the first time in months, I didn't fight the bed. That was a huge shift. Odd fact, Leonardo da Vinci allegedly slept only 2 hours a day in 20-minute increments. It's called polyphasic sleep, and some biohackers swear by it. Personally, I think Leo was just afraid of his mattress. Anyway, I started noticing small improvements. Fewer aches. My shoulders stopped cracking like a haunted doll when I rolled over. I stopped waking up at 3 a.m. with that panicked feeling like my body had collapsed in on itself. But here's the twist. It wasn't just the mattress. It was the space. I started seeing my bedroom, not as a storage closet with a bed, but as a sacred sleep cave. I decluttered, removed the laundry chair. You know the one. Hid the wires, moved the desk out. No more working where I sleep. No more snack crumbs in the sheets. I even added a plant. His name is Greg. He's very judgmental, but the air feels better. I also invested in blackout curtains because apparently even slivers of streetlight can mess with your melatonin. I tested it. One night, I left the curtain cracked and ended up dreaming about being interrogated under a spotlight by anthropomorphic lamps. Never again. Historians still debate whether blackout sleep is more restorative than natural dawn-light waking. But I can tell you, this darkness is delicious when it feels intentional. like the world is giving you permission to switch off. Another thing, I changed sheets. Don't underestimate the power of soft, breathable, non-scratchy fabric. I bought linen sheets and for a moment considered writing them a thank you letter. My skin stopped revolting. I no longer woke up sweaty and confused like I'd fought off nightmares in a sauna. There was one night, it was raining lightly. The fan was humming at just the right frequency, and I had just slid into bed with a clean body and a smug sense of peace. And I thought, oh, this. This is what they mean when they say sleep is healing. Off-topic fact, sloths can sleep 15 hours a day. They sleep hanging from trees completely relaxed. Meanwhile, I used to need 3 pillows, a sound machine, and a whispered prayer just to reach RM. Now don't get me wrong. There are still bad nights. No mattress can fix a brain that suddenly wants to analyze that awkward thing you said in 8th grade. But having a space that feels like it supports you, that's game-changing. It doesn't have to be expensive, just intentional. And the mattress, it's not perfect. Sometimes I wake up and wonder if it's too firm, or if I'm just too emotionally unstable to commit to a sleeping surface. But compared to what I was dealing with, it's heaven. Some nights, I even find myself looking forward to bed. That's not something I could say before. Sleep used to be the enemy. Now, it's an awkward friend I'm slowly learning to trust again. One crinkle-free sheet at a time. I tried everything from chamomile tea to journaling at 9 p.m., like a Victorian poet, and it actually started to work. There was a point in my sleepless saga where I became a little desperate. And by a little, I mean I Googled how to hypnotize yourself to sleep and genuinely tried it twice with an accent. Nothing worked long term. A good night here, a decent nap there, but overall, still a mess. Until I stumbled on the concept of sleep rituals, not routines. Rituals. That word felt cooler, more mysterious. Like maybe if I treated sleep like a sacred ceremony, it would stop ghosting me. So I leaned in, hard. The first thing I did was pick a wind-down time, 9:00 p.m. sharp. I told my friends I was turning into a medieval monk. No phone calls, no group chats. If I missed the drama in the group text, so be it. My new vibe was quiet peasant in a cottage with a candle. I started with chamomile tea, of course. Classic. Mildly floral, tastes like hot hay. But comforting. I'd hold the mug like a fragile relic standing by the window and sighing dramatically like I was in a Jane Austen novel. Sometimes I even whispered, "Sleep, take me now," to the night sky. For the record, it never worked immediately, but it felt delightfully ridiculous. Then came journaling. Not the bullet-style, high-efficiency nonsense that productivity gurus push. No, I wrote slow, rambling, sleepy thoughts. Stuff like, why does the fridge hum only when I'm trying to meditate, and I wonder if clouds ever get tired of floating? It didn't matter what I wrote. The goal wasn't clarity. It was decompression. And here's where it got interesting. After a few days of this 9 p.m. ritual, something inside me shifted. My brain stopped sprinting. My body started pre-yawning. It was like I was giving myself emotional permission to stop. Historians still debate whether the Victorians had better sleep because they had less artificial light, or if they were just bored out of their minds. Either way, I was going full Victorian. I even read a few pages of old books before bed. Like actual books, with yellowed pages and sentences that go on for paragraphs. I read Wuthering Heights and promptly fell asleep every time Heathcliff got emotional, which is, to be fair, constantly. I tried light stretching too. Nothing intense, just a few lazy folds, some shoulder rolls, and a move I invented called crying tree. It's where you bend forward, flop your arms down, and sigh as dramatically as possible. Highly recommend. Odd fact: octopuses change color when they sleep, and some scientists believe they might even dream. Imagine that tentacled dreams in rainbow hues. Meanwhile, I was still over here trying to figure out if lavender essential oil was a placebo or a miracle. And speaking of lavender, yes, I used it. I became the kind of person who spritzes pillows with herbal mist, who lights candles, who plays gentle forest soundtracks at low volume, and nods solemnly like the trees are protecting me. There was one playlist titled Rain on Tin Roof While Distant Owls Think About Their Choices, instant classic. The weird thing, it wasn't any one thing that changed my sleep. It was all of them, together. A stack of small, almost silly choices that slowly told my nervous system, hey, it's okay now. You can stop panicking. Some nights, I still felt the anxiety creep in. My brain would whisper, what if this is another night of failure? But I started responding, what if it's not? And that tiny shift acknowledging the fear, without feeding it, became its own kind of ritual. I also began wearing sleep socks. Not sexy, I know, but warm feet actually help your body cool down overall, which signals sleepiness. Thank you, thermoregulation. You sly, biological wizard. And I learned to forgive bad nights. That was big. Because before, if I had one sleepless episode, I'd spiral panic, beat myself up, try too hard the next night. But now, I let it be. I'd get up, journal a bit, listen to a weird podcast about haunted ships. Sometimes I even drew sleepy ducks. I had a whole collection of sleepy ducks by the end of the month. One wore a monocle. Historians still debate whether rituals work because they trigger biological rhythms or just soothe the psyche with predictability. Either way, I was finally sleeping. Not perfectly, but reliably. And that was something I hadn't felt in years. Even better, I started waking up without that dreaded morning fog. I'd blink, stretch, and feel fine. Not supercharged, not bouncing off walls, just calm, like my body had rebooted instead of blue screened. There was one morning, I remember it clearly, sunlight pouring in through the cracks of the curtain, the faint scent of lavender in the air. Greg, the plant, looking smug as ever. I sat up in bed and realized I couldn't remember my dreams. And that was okay, because I hadn't fought the night. I'd coasted through it. Sleep had become less of a battle and more like a dance. A slow, awkward waltz at first, but now smoother, softer, like my body had finally remembered how to trust the dark. If you had told me that something as simple as lighting a candle and writing about duck dreams would help restore my rest, I would have laughed. But now I know sometimes the answer isn't harder. It's gentler and quieter and maybe just a little weird. The absurd things I searched at night, like, can you die from no sleep? And what I learned from insomniacs around the world. There's a very specific kind of chaos that happens at 3:17 a.m. It's not quite despair, not quite delirium. Somewhere between, should I buy a new blender and is reality even real? That's where I lived for a while. And during that time, my best friend was Google. I typed in things like, how many days until you go crazy from insomnia? Can lack of sleep make you smell colors? Famous people who never slept and didn't die. Sleep paralysis versus demonic possession chart. It wasn't just morbid curiosity. It was survival research. At 3 a.m., your brain wants answers. It wants certainty. But all I found was contradiction. Historians still debate whether sleep deprivation was used as a method of divine insight or just a really good way to see hallucinated angels. Apparently, some ancient cultures believed staying awake for days could bring spiritual enlightenment. Me, I just saw my neighbor's mailbox twitch once and cried. What surprised me most, though, was discovering I wasn't alone. There were forums, massive threads with people from all over the world. Canada, Sweden, India, Australia, each of them wide awake in their own time zones, bonded by shared misery and melatonin overdoses. One user wrote, "I haven't slept in 42 hours. I think my left eye is blinking slower than the right. Is this how cyborgs feel?" Another confessed, "I pretend to sleep next to my husband, but I'm actually reciting the entire plot of Shrek 2 in my head scene by scene." It was beautiful, sad, but beautiful. The solidarity of sleepless souls. We were a secret army, fighting the night with hope memes and herbal supplements. Odd fact, pigeons can sleep with one half of their brain while the other half stays awake. I envied them deeply. Imagine being able to do that during a Zoom meeting. One eye closed, the other nodding along like, "Yes, Bob, synergy indeed." Anyway, back to my 3 a.m. brain spirals. Sometimes I'd read entire articles about sleep science and retain none of it. Other times, I'd fall into wormholes like how astronauts handle sleep in zero-gravity answer Velcro and sleeping bags attached to walls. One time I spent an hour learning about how sea otters hold hands so they don't drift apart while sleeping. I cried. Not because I was emotional, because I was the drifting otter. The night can feel like a villain, but it also reveals strange truths. I noticed that my thoughts at 3 a.m. were never rational. They had this poetic flair, like my brain was auditioning for a spoken word gig I never asked for. "I am a shadow of a shadow," I once whispered to the bathroom mirror. Why? Unclear. But slowly through the digital insomnia underground, I learned something useful. Structure matters, but so does softness. Everyone had their own quirky system. One guy swore by eating a spoonful of almond butter at 9 p.m. Another took cold showers while humming classical music. Someone else built a DIY sensory deprivation tank in his garage. Don't do that. But what they all had in common was the attempt, the refusal to give up. Even if they were still tired, they were trying. And that changed something in me. It took sleep from being a punishment to being a practice. Not a one-night miracle, a process. So I made a weird choice. I created a sleep notebook. Inside it, I wrote all the wild 3 a.m. questions I had. No Googling, just writing. What if sleep is a time machine? Why do dreams sometimes smell like my 5th grade classroom? If I never sleep again, will I start seeing into other dimensions? And then I closed the notebook. The act of capturing the chaos somehow calmed it. It's like I told my brain, "Hey, I see you. Let's talk in the morning." Historians still debate whether insomnia is a disorder or simply a mismatch between modern life and ancient biology. All I know is that I started listening to myself more. Not just panicking when I couldn't sleep, but observing. What did I eat? What did I watch? Was I stressed? Did I doom scroll for 45 minutes? Watching people clean carpets? I also began tracking what I called mental temperature. If my brain felt hot, racing jittery, I'd cool it. Not physically, just mentally. Soft music, deep breaths, stroking the pages of a book without even reading them. It's weirdly soothing. Try it sometime. Off-topic fact, in 2004, a man in the UK stayed awake for 11 straight days to break a record, and by day 7, he believed he was a glass of orange juice. This is why I stopped pushing through sleeplessness and started responding to it. I still visited the forums, not out of panic, but community. I shared tips, celebrated small victories. One night, a guy from New Zealand said I slept for 4 hours without waking. It felt like I borrowed time from the universe. I copied that line into my notebook. Sleep became something I wanted to understand, not something I had to fix immediately. That shift, it melted some of the pressure away. And the wildest part? Once I stopped chasing sleep with desperation, it started finding me, like a shy cat. Like, oh, you're not screaming into your pillow anymore. Cool, I'll come hang out. So, if you're Googling stuff right now, if you're in that weird neon glow with tired eyes and spiraling thoughts, know this. You're not broken. You're just in the club. And you're not alone. How I finally made peace with sleep, trained my body to trust the night, and found unexpected joy in early mornings. It didn't happen overnight, ironically. There wasn't a single magical moment when everything clicked and I suddenly slept like a baby. Honestly, I don't even want to sleep like a baby. Have you seen babies? They wake up every 3 hours, scream for milk, and then pass out mid-sentence. I wanted to sleep like a well-adjusted sea lion on a sunlit rock. But gradually, quietly, things began to change. It started with me not dreading bedtime. That was new. I used to treat 10 p.m. like a cursed hour, where hope went to die and thoughts came alive. But one night I just yawned, naturally. No drama, no fanfare. I looked at the clock, said, huh, and crawled into bed like someone who believed in sleep again. That night, I slept 6 hours straight. I woke up groggy but calm, like my body had taken a fragile step toward trusting the night. Trust. That's the word that kept echoing. Sleep at its core is an act of trust. You're handing your body over to the dark, saying, here, take me. I'll see you in the morning. And for insomniacs, that's terrifying, because our brains whisper, what if we don't come back? What if sleep never comes? But mine was finally starting to whisper less. It helped that I began waking up to morning's real ones, sunlight slipping through the curtains, birds arguing outside. My plant, Greg basking like a smug leaf king. I even started going on walks right after waking up. Morning walks. Who even was I? Odd fact, some scientists believe early morning light exposure helps reset your circadian rhythm faster than melatonin ever could. I tested it myself. I'd walk for 10 minutes, face the rising sun, like a confused sunflower, and feel present, awake. Not hyper or wired, just tuned in. There was one morning that really stuck. It had rained overnight. The sidewalk was damp, the air crisp. I had a thermos of herbal tea in one hand and a sleepy smile on my face. And out of nowhere, I felt this deep, quiet joy. Not the kind you scream about on social media, the kind that hums under your skin and makes you grateful to be upright. Breathing, awake, not tired. I laughed a little, because wow. After months of chaos, Google Spiral's mattress drama, and Victorian-style journaling, this was it. A walk, a breeze, no eye twitches. Historians still debate whether the modern obsession with productivity has robbed us of the simple art of resting. I think it has. Sleep became something I had to earn. Like if I didn't conquer the day, I didn't deserve the night. But now I saw it differently. Rest wasn't a prize. It was a right. Like drinking water. Like blinking. The night lost its edge too. I stopped fighting it. I welcomed it. Instead of fearing the moment the lights went out, I started leaning into it. I let darkness wrap around me like a blanket I chose instead of one thrown over my head. I stopped chasing dreams like they owed me something and started allowing them to just arrive. Sometimes they didn't. That was okay too. Some nights, I still tossed a bit. Got up to pee. Wondered briefly if I'd ruin my progress. But I didn't spiral. I just exhaled. Brushed the thought away like lint. Rolled over. The rituals remained, but they softened. I didn't light a candle every night. Sometimes I forgot to journal. Occasionally, I fell asleep halfway through brushing my hair. But that's what made it beautiful. The sleep didn't come because I forced it. It came because I stopped being afraid of losing it. Off-topic fact. The Japanese word inamuri refers to the practice of being present while asleep, like a nap taken in public, out of honor for working hard. I love that idea. A nap as a badge of pride. Sleep as proof that you lived the day well. And maybe that's what changed everything. I stopped treating sleep as a war and started seeing it as a reunion. Me and my body. Me and my thoughts. Me and the quiet. So if you're still in the middle of it, if you're in that heavy buzzing silence where the fan spins and your mind runs marathons, I see you. I was you. But sleep doesn't hate you. It's not punishing you. It's just waiting for you to stop chasing it and start inviting it back. Let it come. And when it does, hold it gently. It may wobble at first. It may feel unfamiliar, but it will return. And with it, so will you. So, we made it. From ceiling fan standoffs to duck journals, from cursed mattresses to 3 a.m. Google marathons, it's been a strange, sleepy ride. But if you're still here, if you made it to the end of this story, I want to tell you something soft and simple. You're okay. You're not broken. You're not doomed. You're just tired. And being tired doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you've been awake too long in a world that often forgets how to rest. What helped me wasn't a miracle cure or some ultra-optimized productivity hack. It was patience, gentleness, a little humor, and the quiet realization that sleep isn't something we earn. It's something we deserve. All of us. Your bed doesn't have to be perfect. Your routine doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need fancy oils or monk-grade silence or a lavender field outside your window. What you do need is the courage to slow down, to let go, to trust the dark again. So tonight, when the lights go out, I hope you'll breathe a little deeper. Wiggle your toes under the covers. Smile just a little. Because even if sleep doesn't come right away, you're already closer than you think. Let the night hold you, not haunt you. Let sleep find you, not chase you. And let morning soft, slow, unbothered, greet you like an old friend. You made it. Rest easy.